My wife yelled, "This house is a prison. I'm leaving." I simply said, "If that's what you need." Then I had my lawyer send her an itemized bill for her half of the mortgage she hasn't paid in a year. Her sobbing voicemails from her mother's house. Got a voicemail from my mother-in-law this morning, 23rd one since the mediation hearing 2 weeks ago. Haven't listened to any of them, but I can see they're getting longer. This latest one runs 12 minutes, probably another speech about forgiveness and second chances. Rich coming from a woman on her third marriage who still introduces me as Rachel's current husband at family gatherings. My wife Rachel moved back to her mother's house 3 months ago after declaring our home a prison. According to her Instagram, she's on a journey of self-liberation. According to her lawyer's latest settlement proposal, that journey requires 70% of our assets and indefinite spousal support. But let me start from the beginning, because this situation took 2 years to explode and another 6 months to reach this point. I'm Tom, 52, and I own a chain of 5 tire shops. Started with one location 20 years ago, built it up through long hours and reinvesting everything. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and keeps 40 people employed. Met Rachel 15 years ago when she brought her car in for new tires. She was 33, recently divorced from an artist who'd spent their savings on a failed gallery. She worked as a dental hygienist and said she wanted stability this time. "I'm done with dreamers," she told me on our 3rd date. "I want someone who has their feet on the ground." Should have noticed she defined herself by what she was running from, not what she was running to. But I was 37, established, and ready to settle down with someone who seemed to appreciate hard work. We married 2 years later. Nice wedding, nothing extravagant. Bought a 4-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood, the kind with mature trees and kids riding bikes. Rachel kept working for about a year after the wedding, then quit. Said she wanted to focus on making our house a home. I was fine with it. The shops were doing well and I liked the idea of someone actually being home when I got there. First few years were great. Rachel threw herself into homemaking like it was her calling. Decorated every room, learned gourmet cooking, hosted dinner parties that made us popular in the neighborhood. She seemed genuinely happy. We talked about kids, but she wanted to wait until she felt ready. I didn't push. Around year 5, the restlessness started. "Don't you want more than this?" she asked one night over dinner. "More than what?" "This routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat." "That's called life, Rachel. What do you want to do?" "Travel. See the world, have adventures." "So let's plan a trip. Where do you want to go?" "It's not about a trip, it's about freedom to be spontaneous." Hard to be spontaneous when you run a business. Maybe that's the problem. That became her theme. Maybe the business was the problem. Maybe the house was the problem. Maybe the town was the problem. Never that, her expectations were the problem. Year 7 brought the renovation obsession. Kitchen wasn't modern enough. Bathrooms needed updating. Basement should be finished. I went along because I wanted her happy, and we could afford it. Spent about $120,000 total over 2 years. Each project just led to another complaint. "This house has no soul," she announced after we'd completely renovated it. "It's too perfect, too suburban. You designed every inch of it." I was trying to make it something it's not. Year 10 was when she discovered wellness culture. Started with yoga classes, escalated to retreats and workshops, life coaches, meditation gurus, self-discovery weekends. I didn't object. If it helped her find purpose, money well spent. The retreats got more expensive and frequent. A weekend in Sedona, a week in Costa Rica, 2 weeks in Bali, always coming back with new vocabulary about authentic living and spiritual awakening. Started talking about how our life was unconscious and inauthentic. "What's inauthentic about it?" I asked after her 3rd Bali trip. "Everything. This house, this neighborhood, this life, it's all so programmed." "By who?" "Society, expectations, the matrix of suburban conformity." "The matrix of suburban conformity? Where'd you get that?" "You wouldn't understand. You've never questioned anything." "I question why we need to spend $8,000 to sit in silence in Bali. See, you reduce everything to money, because everything costs money. That's such limited thinking." Year 11 brought her friendship with Marissa. Met her at a workshop about radical authenticity. Marissa was everything Rachel thought she wanted to be. Single at 45, living in a downtown loft, calling herself a life artist, which seemed to mean she lived off her divorce settlement while making vision boards. Suddenly, our life was embarrassing. Our house was a prison. Marriage was outdated. My work ethic was toxic productivity. Everything stable was suspect. "Marissa's flying to Peru next week for an ayahuasca ceremony," Rachel would say. "Just booked it yesterday. Must be nice to have that freedom." "You could go to Peru." We have savings. That's not the point. She doesn't have to ask anyone or plan around someone else's schedule. Because she has no responsibilities. Exactly. No prison bars. Started couples therapy that year. Rachel picked the therapist, Dr. Linda, who spent most sessions exploring how traditional marriage structures constrained feminine evolution. When I mentioned that Rachel hadn't worked in 10 years and had unlimited freedom to pursue her interests, Dr. Linda said I was weaponizing financial dependence. How is supporting someone weaponizing anything? I asked. By creating a dynamic where she needs your permission. She doesn't need my permission. She spent $60,000 on retreats without asking. The fact that you're tracking the amount proves the power imbalance. Couldn't win. If I supported her, I was controlling. If I questioned expenses, I was financially abusive. If I mentioned she could work if she wanted independence, I was shaming her choices. Year 12 was when she started spending more time with Marissa. Weekend trips to the city. Week-long artist retreats that seemed to involve wine and complaining about men. Always coming home with new grievances about our life. Marissa says marriage is a patriarchal construct designed to control women's sexuality and labor. Marissa's been divorced 3 times. Maybe she's not the best marriage counselor. She's experienced. She's lived. What have I done? Built a home, created a life, been a partner, been a prisoner. That word started showing up everywhere. The house was a prison. Marriage was a prison. The neighborhood was a prison. My schedule was a prison. Everything that provided structure was imprisonment. 6 months ago, things reached a breaking point. She'd been at one of Marissa's workshops, really just 8 divorced women drinking wine and validating each other's complaints, and came home vibrating with righteous anger. I've had an awakening, she announced. Another one? Don't be dismissive. This is serious. I've realized I'm dying here. Dying? Spiritually, emotionally. This house, this life, it's killing everything authentic about me. What do you want to do about it? I need space, real space, to discover who I am without all these constraints. What constraints? You do whatever you want. I do what I want within the prison of being Mrs. Tom Gardner in this suburban tomb. So what do you want? Freedom, liberation, a chance to really live. Meaning, I'm moving out. Tonight. I need to find myself without you watching and judging. I'm not stopping you. She seemed surprised I didn't fight. Packed dramatically while listing all the ways I'd held her back by providing a stable life. Left for her mother's house with promises to do the work on herself. I changed the locks the next day. Not to keep her out, but because she'd been careless with keys and I didn't know who might have copies. Texted her about it so she wouldn't be surprised if she came by. That text triggered a storm. How dare I change the locks on our house? This was financial abuse, controlling behavior, probably illegal. Called my lawyer Gary the next morning. He'd handled business stuff for me for years but also did family law. Told him the whole situation. She left voluntarily, he asked. Packed her bags and announced she was leaving to find herself. Any kids? No, she couldn't decide if she wanted them. How long since she worked? 13 years. She'll want support, probably significant support. She's able-bodied with a hygienist license. Why would I support her choosing not to work? Because that's how divorce works. You enabled her lifestyle, you continue supporting it. For how long? Depends on the judge. Could be years, could be permanent. That's insane. That's marriage. Let's talk strategy. Rachel hired Marissa's divorce attorney, a guy named Brad who apparently specialized in empowering women through divorce. First settlement proposal was aggressive. She wanted the house, lifetime support, and 70% of all assets. Gary laughed when he saw it. They're anchoring high. Standard tactic. Here's what we do. We documented everything. 13 years of choosing not to work. Over $400,000 spent on personal enrichment, retreats, workshops, coaches, shopping. The fact that she'd left voluntarily while calling our life a prison. Her social media posts about liberation and authenticity. The forensic accountant found interesting patterns. Rachel had been moving money to a personal account for months before leaving. Small amounts but regular. She'd also opened credit cards I didn't know about, run up about $30,000 in debt on retreat deposits and investments in herself. First mediation was a disaster. Rachel showed up in new designer clothes, talking about her journey and authentic self. When the mediator asked about her employment plans, she said she was exploring possibilities in the wellness space. What does that mean concretely? The mediator asked. I'm training to be a life coach, helping other women break free from limiting beliefs. Training where? Various workshops and online courses. Are you certified? Certification is just another form of patriarchal gatekeeping. The mediator, a woman in her 60s, looked over her glasses. How do you plan to support yourself? That's what we're here to discuss. Tom trapped me in financial dependence for 13 years. He owes me support while I build my practice. From what I see, you chose not to work. Is that correct? I was maintaining our home. The records show a housekeeper twice weekly, a gardener, pool service, and meal deliveries several times a week. There's more to maintaining a home than chores. Can you explain what you contributed? Emotional labor, spiritual energy, creating a harmonious environment. I see receipts here for over $70,000 in retreat expenses last year. Was that necessary for home maintenance? Rachel's lawyer tried to redirect, but damage was done. The mediator suggested she consider getting a job while pursuing her coaching dreams. Second mediation brought new demands. Rachel wanted credit for unpaid domestic labor. Apparently she'd calculated that her household management was worth $150,000 per year. Gary nearly choked on his coffee. How did you arrive at that number? The mediator asked. It's based on what a house manager, personal chef, decorator, and life organizer would cost. But you had a housekeeper, used meal delivery, and spent most of your time at retreats. What exactly were you managing? The emotional ecosystem of our home. Can you quantify that? Not everything valuable can be quantified. That's Tom's problem. He reduces everything to numbers. This is a financial negotiation. Numbers are relevant. The breakthrough came when Rachel's credit card statements were fully examined. Not just the amounts, but where they went. Turns out several retreats were actually just luxury resorts. The wellness workshops included spa packages and shopping trips. One, consciousness expansion intensive, was a wine tasting cruise. Her lawyer tried to argue these were legitimate self-care expenses. The mediator wasn't buying it. Mrs. Gardner, you spent $42,000 last year on something called a goddess activation retreat in Tulum. Can you explain what that was? It was a transformative experience of feminine empowerment. According to the resort website, it was a 5-star all-inclusive vacation with daily yoga classes. That's a reductive description. But accurate? Rachel's position weakened with each revelation. The life coach training she'd been doing? Mostly Instagram courses about building a personal brand. The wellness investments? Luxury goods and experiences marketed with spiritual language. Then came the kicker. Rachel had been telling people I was abusive, controlling, that she'd escaped a toxic marriage. Posted about it on social media. Given interviews to a podcast about survivor stories. Problem was, she'd also posted hundreds of photos over the years showing our trips, date nights, her retreats, all the freedom she'd had. Hard to claim imprisonment when you're documenting your liberty. My lawyer sent a cease and desist about the defamation. Her lawyer convinced her to take down the posts, but screenshots existed. Judges don't like when someone claims abuse, while evidence shows the opposite. Final mediation happened 2 weeks ago. Rachel's demands had dropped significantly, but she still wanted the house and substantial support. She arrived with Marissa for moral support, both dressed like they were going to a wellness photo shoot. The mediator had done her homework. Mrs. Gardner, you've stated you can't work because of the trauma of your marriage, yet you left voluntarily, calling it liberation. Can you explain? Just because I chose to leave doesn't mean I wasn't traumatized. By what specifically? The daily microaggressions. The spiritual suppression. Can you give examples? Tom never understood my journey. He'd make comments about the costs of retreats. Noting that retreats cost money is traumatic? It's the energy behind it. The judgment. I see. And now you want him to pay for more retreats? I want support while I heal and build my authentic life. The life you couldn't build during 13 years of financial support? Rachel started crying then. Not sad tears, frustrated ones. The mediator offered tissues and waited. This isn't fair. Rachel finally said, I gave him 13 years. What did you give him? My presence, my energy, myself. And what did he give you? Money, said like it was nothing. Just money. And stability, a home, security. The prison you mentioned? Rachel had no answer for that. The final agreement wasn't what either of us wanted, but was fair. Rachel gets 2 years of rehabilitative support at $3,000 per month, enough to live on while she figures out employment. We split the house equity 50-50 after sale. She keeps what she moved money to her personal accounts, about $40,000, but is responsible for the credit card debt she accumulated. No permanent alimony. She exploded when presented with the terms. 2 years? That's nothing. Her lawyer explained it was reasonable given her employability and the length of marriage. But I haven't worked in 13 years. By choice, the mediator noted. You maintained your hygienist license. You could return to work. I'm not that person anymore. Then become someone new who's employed. The house went on market last week. Multiple offers already. Turns out the prison is highly desirable. Should clear about $400,000 after mortgage payoff. Rachel's share will be around $200,000 after the debt settlement. Enough to start over, not enough to retire on. She's been calling nonstop since signing the agreement. First angry, how could I do this to her? Then bargaining, what if she gave up the support for the house? Then desperate, she can't build a coaching practice in 2 years. You had 13 years to build something, I told her in the one call I answered. You built vision boards. That's cruel. That's accurate. Her mother's been calling too. Diane's frustrated because Rachel won't look for work, just spends time creating Instagram content about her Phoenix journey and attending Marissa's wine-fueled support groups. She keeps saying the universe will provide, Diane told me. I said the universe provided Tom and she threw him away. Even Marissa's getting tired of it. Turns out encouraging someone to leave their marriage is more fun than housing them after. Rachel asked to move into the loft and Marissa suddenly had a no roommates policy. My favorite development? Rachel started a GoFundMe for her journey to authentic living. Raised $236, mostly from her mom. The comment section turned brutal when people realized she was fundraising a divorce settlement. I'm buying a 3-bedroom ranch closer to my main shop. Simple, 1-story, minimal maintenance. Dating someone new, met her at my accountant's office where she works. She owns her own condo, has a 401k, and thinks vision boards are for teenagers. We go Dutch on dinners, and she's never used the word journey, except for actual travel. My ex wanted to find himself too, she told me last week. Found himself living in his car. Turns out authentic living requires authentic income. Rachel's latest strategy is telling people I financially abused her by only giving her 2 years support. One of her workshop friends called me about it. Do you know what she's going through? This woman asked. Yes, she's going through the consequences of her choices. She's lost everything. She got half the house equity and 2 years support for choosing not to work. That's not nothing. But her dreams cost money. My money. Which is why we're divorced. The house closes next month. Rachel will get her check, her 2 years of support, and her complete freedom from the prison of marriage to someone who worked for a living. She can be authentic, liberated, and employed if she chooses. The universe did provide for her. It provided a husband who supported her for 13 years while she searched for meaning in every resort and workshop on the coast. Now the universe is providing reality. 2 years goes fast when you're not working. She'll figure that out soon enough. As for me, I'm free too. Free from vision boards and goddess retreats. Free from being called a prison warden for paying bills. Free from someone who confused luxury with enlightenment and my bank account with the universe's abundance. The real prison wasn't the house. It was living with someone who saw stability as stagnation and gratitude as optional. Now we're both liberated. Only difference is I can afford my freedom.